Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Awesome, awesome. Let me know if you're ready. Are you ready?
yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's get into it. So, what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into this space. My name's Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Here with my beautiful wife from Marmaris, Turkey. Yeah, it's AKDI. What's up, boo?
Hey, what's up?
All right, so this is episode 18 of our movie reviews. Shout out to The Violator. I do remember the movie that you wanted us to touch on, Agira, war movie, the German movie. We will watch it. It is on the list soon. Acti's actually going to Germany, actually tomorrow, so maybe she'll have more insight on it, and we'll watch it when she comes back. But today is going to be something special. We're doing a series review. We've never reviewed a series before, and I got this suggestion from somebody on my YouTube channel. I believe his name was Nelson Moreno, and he suggested that we watch the 2020 HBO series We Are Who We Are, which is a coming-of-age drama that was only one season long and 8 episodes. And we literally just finished it today. We watched it for about a week. So yeah, that's it. That's it. And Actor, you ready to jump into this story?
Yeah, I'm just sad. Like, this is the first episode that I'm doing not drinking, and it's we are who we are. Like, this is the one that I need to drink the most.
Okay. There's a lot and a little to say about this show, and I think let's just give a summary. So I'm reading from the wiki page. We Are Who We Are focuses on two American teenagers who live on a fictional U.S. military base in Chioggia, Italy. I don't know how to pronounce it, and I'm not going to look it up. They're basically in a small town in Italy, which I think is near Venice. And all of the story takes place in 2016. So the series explores friendship, first love, identity, and immerses the audience in all the messy exhilaration and anguish of being a teenager. A story which could happen anywhere in the world, but in this case, happens in this little slice of America in Italy. That's an interesting way of summarizing the story, I would say. But so when we finished the show, Acty, how did you feel?
Honestly, I felt a bit frustrated because this whole series is kind of all over the place. You never know what's happening, which is like kind of nice, but then you also want some things to tie up in the end, or at least not tie up, but just like give us what you were like, what you were trying to give us. Give us that. And I felt like the ending was just sort of cliche, and I'll explain why later.
I don't feel like the ending was cliche. The ending was definitely underwhelming for me. I did not see it coming, but it's not like I was hoping for this to happen because spoilers all the time. The two main characters end up, having some sort of romantic relationship, and it's not like I was shipping them. It's not like, oh yes, finally he gets the girl or she gets the guy. And I feel like there was a lot of unresolved parts of the story because
Yeah.
honestly, that description that I just read is not a good description of the show. It's not just about two teenagers. It's about a whole lot of other things, but the show chooses to leave the other things on the table and just focus on two teenagers at the like middle part onwards, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. I mean, their relationship is interesting and both characters are interesting, but there are also like so many side characters that are very, very interesting. And I just felt like, I feel like, if it's only going to be like 8 episodes, and if there's not going to be a season two, then I wanted some resolution, or I wanted something with other people in the movie too. Like, I wanted like, so what happened to all of the other very interesting characters?
Absolutely. And I think on paper, this show has a lot of things that you could really love about it, but they don't execute on the ideas well enough, in my opinion. So, there's a little bit of Islam in there. Like I'm not a practicing Muslim, but I identify as Muslim. And that's an interesting thing to look into, a young man's conversion into Islam. There's like being on a military base in Italy. Why does America have this, large complex in the middle of Italy? And there's a lot of
Hmm.
questions you could bring up about that. There's trans issues that come up and homosexuality that comes up in this film. And there's a lot of things to talk about in that. I feel like the movie goes into that, not the movie, the series goes into that heavy, but it leaves the other stuff there, like, dynamics of power in the military and America's presence all over the world. And so many other things that are interesting about telling a story about young people coming up in today's America, but in imperial America, in my opinion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There were like a lot of different hints. Also, like just in addition to everything that you were saying, a lot of like exploring your sexuality, and also the time that they choose to like base this whole series on, like 2016, where Trump was getting elected and stuff like that. They show like a lot of, Trump just being on screen and
Mhm.
doing his campaigns and getting elected and stuff like that. And parents and children's dynamic, like, because the families in the story, I feel like, are very interesting, because on one hand you have like this very, this lesbian couple who's like just very modern. They let their kid drink, and their kid is like this fashion designer wannabe, and he's like this poetry type of guy, and they let him beat them around and
Mhm.
call
Mhm.
them like whatever they want. And then the other hand, like, Kate's family is sort of like very American, like, MAGA hats, and very traditional. Mom knows her place, dad knows his place, and stuff like that. It's like very contrasting two families that are not perfect at all on either
Mhm.
side. I
Mhm.
thought that was like a very interesting, their family dynamics were really interesting, but we didn't have a lot of, the ending didn't have a lot of things to do with that.
All right, let's speed it up a bit. So I'm going to jump into the characters, the main characters of the show. We have Chloe Savigny, and she plays Sarah Wilson. She's the colonel in the U.S. Army, and that's Fraser's mom. And she's like the new boss of the base. She comes in episode 1 and moves in from New York. The next person that we have is Jack Dylan Grazer as Fraser Wilson, and he's a 14-year-old who moves from New York City to a military base with his mom and also his mom's girlfriend or wife. Do you think they were married? Were they married?
I think she called her wife.
Okay. And then we have Alice Braga as Maggie Terrera, a major in the U.S. Army, Fraser's mother, and Sarah's wife. Okay.
No,
So
Maggie is the wife. Sarah is the mother.
and Sarah's wife. Fraser's other mother, meaning his other mother, not his biological mother.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying here. So
Oh.
then we have Jordan Christine Simon as Caitlin Pothries, or Harper, a seemingly bold and confident 14-year-old who is struggling with her gender identity. She's a young black girl who I think is also Asian. How does she not have a Wikipedia page? So we don't know anything about her. This might be her breakout role, but I'm pretty sure when that Wikipedia drops, they're going to be like early life. Her mother was Taiwanese and her father was I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, Spence Moore II as Danny Poitras, Caitlin's older brother. So this is like her big, tough, gangster-looking older brother. This man had the meanest '70s afro, and he's also the one who wants to become Muslim. Apparently, he can write in Arabic, but he can't say Al Fatiha. Anyway, we have Scott Muscuddy, aka Kid Cuddy, as Richard Poitras, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. Caitlin and Danny's father. We find out later that
Actually, yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, we find out later that Richard is actually only Caitlin's father and Danny's adopted father or stepfather, right? Faith Alabi as Jenny Poitras, Caitlin, and Danny's mother. She's a Nigerian lady who's always smiling and she's very Americanized, as Acti said. Interesting piece of information here. Fat Brittany,
Wow.
the girl who
Don't
plays
say that.
okay, the girl who plays Brittany is actually Martin Scorsese's daughter.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Francesca Scorsese as Brittany Orton, an outspoken, witty, sexually uninhibited girl who's horny for everybody. Ben Taylor as Sam Pratchett, Caitlin's possessive boyfriend and Craig's younger brother. So yeah, Ben is the guy with the braids and the DMX chain who's always trying to kiss on everybody, but he's always getting rejected. He's like an incel. And
Wow.
then we have Corey Knight as Craig Patchett, a soldier in his 20s, cheerful and good natured, who is also Sam's older brother. That's the guy who marries the Italian girl in like episode 5. And Tom Mercier as Jonathan Krzyzewski, a major who works closely with Sarah. And that's the Jewish guy who tries to, come on to what's his name?
Frasier.
Fraser, yeah. So those are the characters. Which character did you find like the most interesting out of everybody who played in the show?
This is hard because all of them are kind of like annoying
Mm.
in different ways. I guess like I don't know. The most interesting has to be like the Poitras family overall. I feel like Kate is interesting, Jenny is interesting, Danny is interesting. I feel like maybe they are the most interesting ones.
Mm. Yeah, I would agree. I think the whole family could have been the center of the show, but the show sort of made it too broad by covering this entire base and bringing in so many characters. But if they dealt with the inner dynamics of their family, because there's like that big conflict, like the father is this man's man who's very patriotic, pro-Trump, and his son wants to be a Muslim, and his daughter wants to be gay, and on top of that, his wife is an immigrant from Nigeria. So how does
Who
he
might be a lesbian.
who might also be a lesbian, right? How does he reconcile his love for Trump and also all of the contradictions within his own family?
Yeah.
That's an interesting show right there. And you could also tell that story of like Frasier and Caitlin's or Harper's, journey together in that dynamic. But they sort of leave that all behind, in my opinion. But I was really interested in the background story of the mother of Caitlin, the Nigerian woman. I thought that would have been interesting to find out more about her, honestly, and also
Yeah.
Danny himself.
Yeah, I was just like at any point, like specifically after like Craig passed away and stuff like that, because they were best friends with Danny. I was just hoping for Danny to just like escape from the military and like in the last episode or something, just like go on his own and try to find his father or something, go on that journey or something. Because I think like one of the first reasons that he became interested in Islam was because of his father, because he was trying to like go down to his roots or something.
Absolutely. And another big thing that the story really doesn't touch on, which I think would have been interesting there, is that intersection of being a U.S. soldier, but also a black U.S. soldier, and all the contradictions that lie in that, because nothing is really addressed about race. And I know this is like a very Gen Z show, like all young people make it, and young people like to act like they're the least racist generation, or race doesn't exist for them, right? Because they have black boyfriends, or their best friends are Asian and stuff like that. But like something had to be spoken about that throughout the show.
I mean, the only line that I remember is Kid Cudi's character, Richard's, saying to Kate after she cut her hair, she said, he said something along the lines with like, it's hard being like us in this world or something like that. And that's the only time I would suggest maybe they were hinting at something like that. But that's it. Yeah.
Right. All right, let's do an episode by episode breakdown. I'm going to read the description of what happened in this episode, and then we'll discuss how we felt when we saw it. Keep in mind, everybody listening or watching right now, that we watched this show sort of like over a week's time with like days in between when we broke it down. And we sort of watched the last maybe 5 episodes in the last 2 days. But we started this last week, left it alone, and then came back to it recently. So, all right, episode 1 is right here, right now. Number 1, directed by Luca Guadagnino. And it aired on my birthday, September 14th. So in that episode, Fraser Wilson and his mothers, Colonel Sarah Wilson and Major Maggie Tejera, arrive at the Venice Marco Polo Airport in Italy from New York City, where they're greeted and picked up by the Nigerian neighbor Jenny Poitras. They arrive at their new house located on the U.S. Army base Casamera Maurizio Pialati. How's my Italian acting?
Perfect.
And they're near a city once again called Chioggia, I don't know, Charizard. So they're living in the city of Charizard in Italy. And the
No,
film,
don't say Charizard.
anyway, and the family begins to settle in. Fraser and his two moms settle into the base. Fraser explores around the army base and the army base's high school, and later haphazardly finds himself dragged along to the beach with a group of his new classmates, led by a girl named Brittany. Fraser finds himself fascinated with a girl named Caitlin, who is Jenny's daughter. Fraser spots Caitlin at a restaurant unexpectedly, and she is dressed like a boy and calls herself Harper. Later at the beach, Fraser asks what he should call her. Interesting. So, how did you feel about that first episode in general when you saw it?
I mean, it was interesting. Like the setting is interesting. You know, they're in Italy, but they live in a American military base, and it's always sort of like amusing how Americans just like take all of their traditions and just fit into this sort of like neighborhood place. That was interesting, and I right off the bat kind of disliked Frasier because he seemed cocky or just like those people who just act like they're complicated just to act like they're complicated, just to
Mhm.
seem complicated. He felt someone like that a little bit, and I didn't know more about him and stuff like that, so I didn't really like him a
Mhm.
lot. I don't know.
Mhm.
What did you feel?
Right. First off, I want to say, Jack Dylan Grazer, the guy who plays Frasier, really brought his character to life. So I'm not attacking him as an actor,
Of
but
course.
but I'm going to say this about Frasier, the character. He was one of the most unlikable characters I've ever come across, and it feels weird for me to say that because he is obviously a neurodivergent person at the very best, or at the very worst, he's autistic and functioning to some degree, right? And I feel like by attacking his character, I feel like people could interpret that as me picking on a mentally disabled person, obviously a disturbed person or something like that. And that's not what I'm doing in that. But it's hard to watch something like that on screen, like the way Frasier acts when he slaps his mom, calls her a B, attacks both of his moms physically. You know what I mean? We see that throughout the show, and even in the first episode, it was jarring when he slaps one of his mothers and is acting so erratic and disrespectful. It's hard to sympathize with that character when you see
Yeah.
something like that happen. You know what I mean? It's like if in the first episode of your favorite cartoon TV show, you see Spider-Man, kick his mom in the clit. You wouldn't root for Spider-Man after that. You know what I mean? Fuck Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So Frasier is hard to reconcile, hard to deal with. It's hard to feel for him because you dislike him because he does things that you really don't understand. And I don't want anybody to hide behind, oh, he's autistic. No, F that, in my opinion.
I mean, I sympathized with his like sort of anger a little bit because I imagined like, he's kind of being dragged off to middle of nowhere Italy from New York, and obviously he's into like something artistic, so maybe he misses that or he missed out on an opportunity or something. So I did like sympathize with that, but yeah, like it didn't excuse his behavior, just like towards his mom and also like other people that he was just like meeting.
Hmm.
You
There was
know?
some parts that made me a little bit say, okay, maybe there's bigger reasons for this. Because when you see him slap one of his mothers or act very disrespectful, you're like, okay, he keeps mentioning this guy Mark. He keeps saying, I miss Mark, or I want to see Mark, or his mother says, did you talk to Mark today? And he's like, shut up, mom, or something like that, right? And so you're hearing this and you're thinking, okay, maybe he was torn away from his home. He loves New York, and now he's no longer with his friend, and that's why he's lashing out. That's why he's angry and stuff like that. And we've all been in those situations. I've been one of those kids where I was at school, and then my parents say, we're moving to another city, and you don't want to move, but you got to because it's your family. And
Yeah.
so I was
Also,
thinking, yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
Just one more thing, like Sarah, the general, the new general of the base or whatever. I didn't understand why everyone kind of disliked her because it felt like her wife also didn't really like her either because she was like, I don't know, they were like kissing or something, and she was like, oh, why do you always want to have sex? Da da da. I don't know. It just felt like nobody liked her, and I liked her.
Hmm.
I was like, why does everybody like hate this lady? She seems like a bad bitch.
Well, I think that's because the show wanted to talk about maybe the sexism or homophobia because, as progressive as the army tries to be, there's going to be a lot of people there who don't want to die under the control of a woman, right? If you're a soldier and you think women are inferior, the last thing you want is a woman boss. And on top of that, she's a lesbian. So they're looking at her like that. And so, the first episode made me feel a bit weird because I was like, okay, where's the show taking me? Where's it going? I felt a little disappointed by the first episode. I give it like a 4 out of 10 as far as entertainment goes. There is a weird scene when Fraser first meets Caitlin or sees Caitlin, and he pulls out his phone and starts videotaping her in an obvious way or taking pictures of her while she's in class and she's like reciting a poem. And it feels like he was being very predatory right there. And I feel like that was how can I say this, foreshadowing for what would happen in the show. But actually, that first episode was underwhelming. What do you rate it from 10?
Yeah, I felt like it definitely felt like, oh, I was like in my head, oh, it's gonna be a slow burn. Like this is just weird off the bat. And yeah, I don't know. I guess like a 5.
Okay,
Because
she's
there were some
basically.
interesting, like, interesting ideas thrown out in there, but didn't really like, it didn't give that what's gonna happen next type of feeling either.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to episode two right here, right now. Two, directed by the same guy, which premiered the week after the first episode. So the events of the first episode are retold from the perspective of Caitlin, whose family has been at the Italian base for many years. She has a short-tempered older brother, Danny, who is still in school and is currently learning Arabic. Her father, Richard, whom she looks up to, is a Trump supporter. Caitlin seems generally uninterested in most things. At the beach, she gets her first period. Her relationship with her boyfriend Sam is strained when she rejects his sexual advances. At a restaurant, she passes for a boy, and Fraser witnesses it. She tells him to stay away from her, but Jenny later tells her that Fraser has left a package for her. Caitlin initially is reluctant to open Fraser's package, curiously opens it, and finds a set of more typically masculine clothing. That night, Caitlin sneaks out of her room to goof off with her brother and their friends. The next morning, Caitlin tries on the gifted clothing, and Fraser sees her do so from across his window next door. So that first episode, I wish they spoke about how that second episode opened, because it shows Caitlin on a boat transporting something that looks illegal. I don't know exactly what they were transporting: illegal oil, drugs, gas, or something, right? And she exchanges it for money, and the people think that she is a boy because there's an Italian man screaming, "Here comes the boy again! Here comes the boy!" Oh no, it's a girl because she has ponytails. I don't know what to think. And yeah, she does this business with her father, so it looks like her and her father are doing like secret shady stuff behind closed doors. And I wonder why that wasn't picked up more in the story too. And yeah, how did you feel about this the second episode?
Yeah, it was definitely more interesting than the first one, I would say, because at least we saw like another character like Kate. And I don't know, in general, like she's not my favorite character, but she's like, she has maybe the highest possibility of being my favorite character. But also she generally seems uninterested about like the things that are happening. It's, I don't know, like I felt like she didn't really have like a lot of hobbies or anything that she was genuinely like passionate about, at least in that episode. And then like, yeah, there were like some weird moments, and I definitely related to some moments when I was watching like her getting her period and stuff like that and being weirded out by that. I experienced that as well. But yeah, it was like he like, she's very close with her dad, and her dad is okay with her being like a tomboyish girl, not wearing tight clothes. She's always like wearing boys clothes and stuff like that. And he's like teaching her how to box. He's teaching her how to like ride the boat or whatever, like whatever they're doing there. Um and she like feels comfortable enough to tell her father that she had her period, but not her mother, which was a bit weird because her mother seemed nice as well. But I don't know, maybe she just didn't relate to her mother.
Mhm.
And in that moment, like her father generally seemed nice, like he really cared about her, and he kind of seemed like open minded. He was
Mhm.
like trying to explain, I don't know, period to her or something like that. So that was like cute. I felt like, okay, like, he's not that bad. So maybe like she has a normal family or something like that. And yeah, I don't know. That's sort of how I felt about it.
Yeah, she had a normal family, or as close to normal as it can be in this situation. And I feel like when we see Caitlin in this episode and everything that happened that day, but from a different perspective, because the first episode is from Fraser's perspective, I feel like we're seeing a normal, generally normal teenage girl. But she's maybe a bit different than her clique. She's running with, her brother, her boyfriend, her girlfriend, like her girl best friend or something like that. And also like one of the older soldiers on the base who's pretty cool, the Jewish guy, I forgot his name. But yeah, she's generally hanging out with these people, but she feels a bit different. Not too different, but she doesn't exactly know what it is. And I feel like when Fraser saw her, he sort of like realized that because he comes from New York, he comes from this major metro area, and he's seen all different types of people. And so he sees this person here who maybe can relate to him or that he can bring into her world. And I hate to be this guy who wants to say this, but I'm gonna say it. I feel like Fraser in the show started to become the villain when he sent her these boy clothes and was trying to maybe put that in her brain. Because when Caitlin goes to the Italian bar that she sells the illegal drugs to or illegal olive oil, who knows what she's selling, there's some Italian girl who tries to like get Caitlin's number because we think as the audience that the Italian girl thinks Caitlin is a boy. But when Caitlin gets the number of the Italian girl, she wipes it away. She erases it. So she's not really interested in the girls like that. But when Fraser sees this interaction happen, Fraser says, "Oh, maybe this is who you really are. This is what you should do. Maybe you should try this." And I felt like that's not cool. I mean, you're gonna see that it's not cool as the story continues from my perspective. But that's just how I feel, honestly, about the show. You know what
Uh,
I mean?
yeah, I don't agree with you on this one because, yeah, like she might have erased it, but it doesn't mean that she didn't have like certain feelings about it because it's something that is taboo in our society and specifically in her family because her family is like the looks like the most traditional family of everyone, and she has a boyfriend and whatnot, so she might be in denial or she might be afraid of certain things and stuff like that, like her dad seeing it in her arm because she was going to go back to the boat to her dad. And in general, like about this topic, I do believe that you can't really force anyone to become anything. Like, you're a straight dude, nobody can really force you, or nobody can hint you to into becoming a transgender woman, you know so I think that wasn't like a push. I think that was sort of just like, maybe, I don't know, seeing her being uncomfortable and testing out ideas from Frasier's point of view.
Right.
It would be better to talk about it rather than sending her clothes, but yeah.
I have two things I want to say about this. The first thing is that I think if you're an impressionable teenager, it's easy to be influenced as a kid by different outlets, sources, your friends, family, whatever. If you looked at your old pictures right now, you might say, "Why did I wear that?" Would you?
Yeah, of course I would say that.
And you would say that because that was the fashion at the time. That's what all my friends were wearing, right?
Hmm.
So it's the same, I feel like, in this situation. Caitlyn is 14 years old, right? And I think another thing is that Frasier was in misery because he didn't fit in at the beginning of in the first episode, and also in the second episode. He doesn't get in the water when everybody's swimming at the beach. One of the guys takes off his pants and throws it at him and says, "Come on, join us," and starts wiggling his little wiener at the camera to Frasier and stuff like that. And they say, "Oh, come on, T-shirt," but then he storms away because he doesn't know how to be social. Part of that might be his mental disorder, but another part might be he's just never had to just be fitting into a group because he's so eccentric, in my opinion. And I feel like Frasier wanted to have somebody else in misery with him. Let's make another outcast out of this clique. I need another outcast with me, in my opinion. That's what I say.
I mean, I think you're missing the bigger picture here, is that being gay or being trans, changing your gender, not, you know, acting according to gender stereotypes is not something ever popular. That's never the trend. Like, unless you're living in New York or something like that and you go to drag like houses and stuff. So in their situation, that's never the trend. So she only has like one person, and then also, I guess, later only two people who are telling her that, hey, like, this is an option and this is okay. So that's not the fashion. So I don't understand why she would go along with that if that's not the fashion, if that's what you mean by being like impressionable.
I would disagree with that for this reason. Let me ask you this question: who is the most powerful person in the show?
Frasier.
No, the most powerful person, meaning they have the most status in the world that is the show.
uh his mom.
Frasier's mom is an open lesbian who is now the colonel of an entire military base in Italy. There are other gay characters here as well. Even if they are not openly gay, they are gay or bi in their life who get by in this world, right? So to say that, oh, being gay is not cool, like, this story doesn't take place in 1950s America. It's 2016 America. So
Yeah, but even if she's the most powerful person on paper, in real life she's still being bullied by her colleagues. Like,
right.
Kate's dad whispering something into her ear, or other whispers going around. It's not like she's like completely accepted in her position on paper. Yeah, she's powerful, but it's not like that in real life.
I would disagree
And
because
if
at
you
the end.
look at Caitlyn's friend group, everyone is straight in their friend group. Everyone is like either hooking up with a girl or a guy. So I don't see that it's still being popular.
Ish. You're saying like they're very, very hetero, like they're super, gender normie, but they're not. They're not because I've never went to the beach with my homies and somebody took off their trunks and waved their dick in front of all of us. So there is a bit of that sexual fluidity within this group. Let's not act like this is once again 1950s America.
Yeah, but nobody's like turning into another gender, or nobody's openly still saying that they're gay or homosexual or whatever. So it's still a taboo. You can still like feel a little bit of the taboo in there, even though it's not 1980.
Once again, I'm not pointing out the fact that Frasier wanted to help his friend reach her true destination. I don't believe Caitlyn actually wanted to be trans, and the show proves it as well. What I think is that Frasier wanted somebody to be different like him. It's not even about the fact that she was trans or he influenced her to be trans. It's about the fact he wanted somebody to be different more than anything. That's also why he was like, oh, listen to this music. Oh, let's talk about these books, these movies. He was trying to bring her into his world because he needed a friend. You get what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, I agree with that. Like, Frasier wasn't influencing her with the right intentions, but I do believe that she's not comfortable as a woman. I
I
don't
would
think she feels comfortable as a woman, or she's still trying to figure it out. Like, I don't know what she wants to be, but it didn't seem like she was comfortable, even when the scenes where they showed her being alone in her own room. Like, she was, looking up YouTube videos of different things.
I would disagree with that, but we'll pick up more on that with the next episodes. One more thing I have to say about episode 2. This is the episode where the Trump hat comes out, the "Make America Great Again" hat comes in the mail for Caitlyn's father, and he buys one for her too. But then we never see the hat again, and Trump really doesn't come up again in the story. Like he's in the background, like on TV and stuff. But like that whole plot line, which is very interesting, once again sort of dies right here, and that's what I have to say about that.
I
You want to
mean,
add?
in that episode, it didn't come up, but later it does come up like a little bit in some lines and stuff like that. But yeah, I think what was interesting there is that, her dad is, I think we do see her dad with the hat but we don't see Kate with the hat ever because the hat actually doesn't fit her because of her hair. And
Right.
I thought maybe it's like a little bit of a play that they did, like the hat doesn't fit her, like her
Mhm.
dad's ideologies doesn't really fit her.
That's a good metaphor. Very smart. Very smart. We might have to break down this review of We Are Who We Are into two parts. So we might just do the first 4 episodes here and then the last 4 episodes in part two, just to let y'all know, because Simon got to get back to work soon. But let's jump into episode. Well, before we jump into episode 3, let me just review episode 2. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. What's your score for episode 2?
uh 6, a 6.
She's nicer than me today, guys. We got the nice one today.
I mean, it was better than the first one, so it's only fair to give it a 6.
All right, let's jump into episode 3 right here, right now. Number 3, very creative titles. Once again, directed by the same guy and written by the same 3 Italian guys. I didn't shout them out, but they are Paolo Giordano, Francesca Menieri, and Luca Guadagnino. Okay, how's my Italian accent?
Mucho bella.
Okay, very beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. All right. And so in episode 3, Frasier and Caitlin's relationship has strengthened since the last episode. On Richard's boat, Caitlin makes a mess of some cookies after Frasier informs her that they may contain shellfish. Later, a heartbroken Sam breaks up with Caitlin, who is unfazed. Brittany sees Sam's misery and comforts him. It's made clear that ever since she became friends with Frasier, Caitlin's other relationships have become strained. At Frasier's house, the two discuss transgender people, and Frasier attempts to teach Caitlin how to shave, but they're interrupted by Sarah. Frasier is angry that the dish he prepared for dinner didn't turn out well, and Caitlin soon witnesses his dysfunctional relationship with Sarah, seemingly resenting his mother's profession. When Caitlin gets back home, Richard angrily tells her to clean up the mess and cookie crumbs she left in the boat. The next day, residents of the base take part in a large parade that happens once a year. Caitlin chooses to walk with Frasier, which angers Danny and causes him to violently lash out at Frasier. Meanwhile, Richard questions his own self-worth after losing the annual game of tug-of-war for the first time. Jenny and Maggie walk together and eat a pie Jenny had baked for her husband. All right, so that episode actually was decent. It was decent. I feel like it was the same level of episode 2. I really liked the opening part where the camera pans has like an aerial view that pans down, and we see Frasier and Caitlin laying down in the boat, and Caitlin says, try the cookies, and he says that they're full of shellfish. And I think in that scene, Caitlin saw that Frasier actually is pretty damn smart, because most people don't realize that all of the food we eat has all sorts of animal products in it. And that was a interesting moment, and it showed me like sort of the dynamic of their relationship. Frasier was kind of a little bit wiser, smarter, so that's why Caitlin was attracted to him, because she's attracted to intelligence. But what did you think of that episode?
Yeah, I think like it was very it was very interesting because of they showed like different characters and their sort of like battles within themselves and stuff like that. For example, like Richard, he's tying like his whole manlyhood, or I don't know, like his character, to this silly game, tug of war, and like he questions himself after that. And then also like Jenny, his wife, I feel like since this is like a sort of like a coming of age series, or based around like teenagers and stuff like that, I felt like Jenny kind of we see Jenny leaving everything behind for her husband, basically, and her admitting like she was a Muslim before and she's from Nigeria, but she doesn't cook any Nigerian foods anymore and stuff like that. And we see her like sort of maybe questioning in her mind some things as she talks with Maggie, who's Sarah's wife. And we see them like sort of having this connection, and that was like one of the most interesting part of this like episodes for me, at least. And yeah, I guess like in a sense, as she was interacting with Maggie, she turned a little bit to her younger years, and she felt a bit frisky, and she got a bit close with Maggie. I don't remember if they kissed in this episode or not,
No.
but yeah, and that was interesting. And yeah, also like another whole different dynamic between the two families. Once again, like Frasier is allowed to smash the dishes and act out to his mother in any sorts of way, while Kate gets in trouble for having cookie crumbles on a boat and stuff like that. And Frasier is like just really hard to watch in this episode because he's just so like snobby and very disrespectful in general. And yeah, I don't know, but it felt like Kate sort of enjoyed that chaos that wasn't about herself.
Mm.
Like she was sort of like just sitting there and watching it like it was a play.
Mm. That's very deep. That's deep. I think what you said right there, Caitlin was enjoying seeing this mess around her that didn't have to do with her. Because in her house, all the mess is sort of like swept under the rug. Jenny sort of smiles while Richard ignores her and ignores her son. And Danny and Richard have sort of like a tension between them, but nobody ever talks about it. So yeah, that's interesting. I really like that. And it was very hard to watch, Francis act out like that.
Frasier.
Frasier. Sorry, I hate him so much I don't even want to remember his name. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, Frasier was like he's also a cook too, which is interesting. One of the good things about series is that there's like character development, so you can add on stuff like, okay, Frasier's also a really good cook too, and he actually knows how to make some food, but they forgot to bring cream, so then he throws a big hissy fit and is threatening to kill his mother and stuff like that, and it was just insane to watch him, absolutely insane. But I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. But something else that wasn't mentioned in the show, in this synopsis I read, was that Fraser's mother was also with Jonathan, the Jewish soldier. At the end, like Fraser sees his mom dancing with
Mm,
Jonathan. What do you think that was about? Because that's not really explored. Like they have Jonathan and Sarah have like a good relationship, but
yeah.
there's no like exploring more of that dynamic between them after this episode. What did you
I
think?
mean, I think Sarah is overall like a cool boss. You know, every time we see her interacting with her peers, she's like very down to earth, and she doesn't seem bossy, and she feels a bit more bossy towards her wife in general. I feel like, and I think that was just like them being out of work and just getting close, getting to know each other since they're going to be working together probably for a couple of years. So I
Hmm.
think they were just having fun and they were being friends and stuff like that. But overall, Frasier is like kind of annoyed when Kate and his mom, gets close or talks about some things,
Hmm.
or when Kate like says something nice about his mom, he gets annoyed and he feels like she takes the limelight out of him or
Hmm.
something. So I
Hmm.
think that's why maybe he was annoyed, because in the first episode, I think, or the second episode, we see Frasier like going into the men's bathroom and then seeing Jonathan naked and just like staring at him,
Hmm.
and that's the first time like they meet, I guess.
Hmm.
And maybe that's why he feels like, oh, look at mom, like he does, she have to go and be friends with everyone when like she doesn't really, she isn't really my friend or something like that. I don't know.
Mm. I feel like it's hard to make that argument, maybe, a little bit, because Frasier, after he lashes out at that dinner party, he cries in the middle of the night and wakes up and goes to his mom and says, "Mommy, mommy, hold me," and lays down in bed with Sarah and Maggie, right?
Yeah.
So obviously he has to love his mother.
Yeah.
In the show he says, I hate her," but he's the one crawling in bed with her at night. And so I think when we see Jonathan and Sarah dancing together, it's sort of like a hint to like the bigger theme of the show. You can't define people. We are who we are, and maybe this is a good thing about the show. It's hard to say, okay, Frasier is gay. No, Frasier is bi. Okay, we really don't even know if Frasier is gay or bi at the end of the show, right?
Hmm.
Caitlin, we don't know if she's a trans person or wants to be a trans person, or if she's cisgender. We don't know. Like everything is sort of vague, right? Richard, is he really a diehard Trump supporter, or does he really just not like Mexicans? I don't know. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like with the scene of Sarah hugging on the man Jonathan, and she looks submissive like a real woman, and like just traditional stuff, right? It's hard to reconcile that with the other Sarah we see in the show. But that's who Sarah is. We are who we are. I don't know. That's how I'm seeing it. You get what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. I mean, sure. Yeah, you can say that. Like with Jenny, we don't really see like her husband, beating her up or anything like that. In general, they just kind of seem uninterested with each other, or maybe like they seem like they lost the spark in their marriage. But he doesn't seem like the type who would like be violent with his wife or force her to do anything. But we kind of see like Jenny making this choice for him a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
because like in the festival, she makes cookies or brownies or whatever, and then she brings them,
A
and
pie,
then
apple pie.
apple pie. And then Richard says, like, I told you we were going to go out to eat. Why did you make apple pie? So
Mm-hmm.
it feels a bit like Jenny is kind of like, putting herself through this because of herself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
her choice a little bit.
Right.
So yeah, it's like you said, like she is who she is. Maybe she wanted to become like a fully American person or something and reject her Nigerian roots.
Right, and that's a theme in the show too. I've spoken to you about this. Like when people come to America or interact with Americans, 99% of the time they want to be Americanized and they want to get as close to that ideal as possible. And what did Jenny try to do? Make apple pie. I mean, what's more American than apple pie? She doesn't watch the Weather Channel in Italy. She's watching the Weather Channel in Chicago, and she
Yeah.
wears like the 1950s aprons, and she's the perfect housewife and all that sort of stuff, right? And so Jenny's character, I feel like, is so underutilized, but also a bit understated. Like it's if you're woke, if your mind is open, you see it when it's happening on screen with Jenny every time she appears.
Yeah.
But it's not really, there's no Jenny episode. There's no expose on Jenny.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? But I'm going to go back to my conspiracy theory because I'm getting back to the main thing. Frasier in this episode was teaching Caitlin about transgenderness, right? And then on top of that, Maggie is making a move on Caitlin's mom. What is the show really trying to say? Like, you can look at the show like, okay, this somewhat normal, somewhat happy American family gets new lesbian neighbors with a weird autistic gay son, and now their family's whole world is turned upside down. The family dynamic is broken. Guess who came into the neighborhood? Guess who our new neighbors are? You get what I'm saying? So
I mean, yeah, it may be that, but it's not like their family was perfect before they arrived. But there are just like certain people who come into our lives or certain things that happen in our lives that makes us see, hey, like my life was sort of like shit before
mhm,
this. So maybe it was that sort of thing that happened to their family. And
mhm,
it's not like Jenny ends up becoming a lesbian at the end,
mhm,
but she sort of has this experiment maybe that she didn't have when because she was with Richard from a very young age or something. I don't know.
maybe. I'm gonna just say this, about the Frasier and Caitlyn thing. I've been on both sides of this thing, right? When I was a kid, when I was about 15, 16, I wanted to be a five percenter, right? Because growing up in Monroe, Louisiana, we're not able to access all different sorts of different cultural trends, religious trends, movement trends. Everybody in my little small town was Christian, right? But I never identified as a Christian, right? And being an atheist in Louisiana is heresy, right? You might as well be Satan himself, right? And I used to argue with people at school all the time that there is no God, right? But I was very interested also in different ways of understanding God. What I was saying when I was a kid was not that I didn't believe in God. I just didn't believe in this blonde hair, blue eyed Jesus who allowed us to get whooped on for 400 years, right? So I wanted to be a 5%er, but there's no 5%ers in Monroe, Louisiana. And so I go online, try to, reach out to different people, Nation of Islam, 5%ers, Nuwabians, whatever. And I end up talking to this guy named True Wise out of Virginia. He was a much older man than me. So when I was about 16, he was maybe about 27 or something like that. I used to talk to True Wise on the phone all the time. And I got my 120 lessons. I don't have time to break all this down for you, but for anybody listening, if you get your 120, that's a big deal. And I memorized all of 120 when I was 16, right? And my father found out that I was talking to this older man over the phone about these crazy religious ideas that the black man is God, the white man's the devil. Yakub, a scientist with a big head, invented the devil, all sorts of crazy stuff, right? I was learning this knowledge, picking up this knowledge from this older man, and my father freaked out. He got on the phone with True Wise, cursed him out, yelled at him, said, never call my son again, and grounded me for a week, tore up my 120 lessons, did all sorts of stuff to me. So I've been in Caitlin's shoes. I know what it feels like to live in a house that's very conservative, rigid, and they're not doing it out of hate. It's like they want to protect their children, right? And looking back on it, I'm not saying I would do the same thing, but I can understand where my father was coming from to some degree, right? But I feel like this, when they're teaching Caitlin about changing her entire body, right? I feel like that's different than changing your mind, right? I didn't want to think a certain way, and that's okay. But for Caitlin not to express these ideas before, that she felt like she was born in the wrong body, she wants to be a boy, and this boy comes and says, "Hey, maybe you're trans. Wear these boy clothes. Put on this mustache. Look, this guy used to look like this prissy little petite girl, and he transitioned. Now he's this hulky man. You could do the same thing too." I feel like that's a bit too much. I feel like that's where I'm coming from with all this. If that makes sense, you get what I'm saying?
It makes sense, but I disagree with you. Because once again, Caitlyn didn't have to be friends with him. Yes, she found him interesting, and he was this big New York guy who came there. But if she wasn't looking for something different, then she wouldn't have found it. Just like you, like if you didn't go online or if you didn't question Jesus and things like that, like you wouldn't find what you were looking for. And maybe she wasn't like voicing her questions, but we could see that she didn't look like your average girl. She didn't want to have sex with her boyfriend. She broke up with her boyfriend in this episode. She was wearing all like, boy clothes, and she felt uncomfortable among her friends. Like we can see foreshadows of her not being comfortable, or at least not fitting into normal norms.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone like tells you this is an option, of course you're going to like be curious about it and think about it and ask yourself, okay, can I be this? Does this suit me? Because in the end, like Caitlyn doesn't turn into a man yet, or at least in the series. So once again, I think it was just like her being curious about doing things that men do, and her experimenting. If I shave, how am I going to feel? And then she started doing it and she felt good about it. Like all of those scenes where she was shaving or cutting her hair or putting on men's dresses and whatever, we see her smile. We see her like just being herself. So I don't think, once again, I don't think you can affect somebody to change their gender, because like you said, it's a very big thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think I
And
get what you, I get what
honestly,
you,
I think Caitlyn had enough like confidence to reject that idea.
like
She
you're
wasn't
saying
like a
if she
lost puppy. Like she was the ex general's daughter. Like she wasn't. She was sort of like, I don't know. She had her clique and whatever, so she didn't really need
No, she was
Frasier.
she wasn't the ex general's daughter. She was the daughter of the man who got looked over to become general,
Oh,
and that
okay.
was a point of contention because there was, I believe, in episode 2 or 3, I forgot if it was the second one or the third one, but when they do the ritual of passing over the torch to Sarah, Richard is like, and I think that's the first time we see Richard. He says, this should be me, or I can't believe they did this, or something like that. What does she know about honor, and something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I get where you're coming from about Caitlyn being able to make her own choices, and maybe she's just experimenting with different things. I think another thing also that contradicts what I was saying earlier, but is something to think about, is that her father always treated her like a boy. So maybe she did feel like, well, maybe I am a boy because my father always takes me hunting. He wants me to play tug of war. He plays basketball with me. We we talk about hoes together. I mean, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like she's making like rush decisions, honestly. She's like every time she, sees something new, a brochure or something Frasier tells her about being transgender and things like that, she takes that into heart, and I think she thinks about them and then makes like decisions like trying to shave and stuff like that. And not once she says, "I want to be a boy," or "I don't feel comfortable as a girl," or anything. She never declares that, but it feels like she's just constantly experimenting.
mm, okay, okay. One more thing about this episode before we go to episode 4, then we'll wrap this up and do part 2, maybe later tonight. Is in this episode, Frasier and Caitlin agree to never kiss. They say we're never going to kiss, and I thought that would be that for their romantic opportunities, and it didn't seem like there was any spark between them at all. If the directors or the producers were going for that, they totally missed it up until like the very last episode, until the very last moment, which kind of either makes it a surprise or it kind of makes this show fall flat. If that's what they were trying to say, like there was some sort of chemistry brewing between them, because this is one of the few times where it looks like men and women have a purely platonic relationship, and there's no tension, sexual tension between them at all.
Hmm.
And I'm talking about the relationship between Caitlin and Frasier.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. They just seemed like two friends who were from different worlds and who were just really interested in each other's ideas and I don't know things. And Frasier was a bit more like selfish person in their relationship when it comes to sharing ideas and stuff like that. But in general, like I mean, I don't think Kate was like a stupid girl or anything like that. She was just a bit more of a quiet person than
Mhm.
Frasier. But yeah, it felt like they didn't have any spark. It didn't feel like they wanted to kiss or they wanted to be boyfriend and girlfriend. But yeah, I think what was a bit interesting is that also like all of their friends thought they were dating, but
Mm.
actually they weren't.
Yeah, yeah, they kept saying that. I think there was a scene where Brittany came up and said, "Ever since he came, y'all don't want to hang out with us no more, or you guys think you're different, or something like that." One more thing. I know I keep saying a lot about episode three, but Kid Cudi is the perfect person to pick for a soldier because that boy is a jarhead. Get it,
Stop.
jarhead?
What?
You get it, jarhead? No, you don't get.
Jarhead? No, I don't
You
get
don't.
it. I
Jarhead is a term for a marine, a soldier.
oh wow. Okay, it's a
And his
pun.
head is literally shaped like a jar. He's got a
Yeah,
little square
yeah,
rectangular head, whatever. And I just want to say this: I liked the scene in this episode where Kid Cudi is wearing like this Italian 16th century military uniform because
yeah.
he looks like he can juggle oranges like with his eyes closed. He looks like he can balance on a tightrope over a crocodile den. He
Yeah,
looks
that's
like
the thing. Like, you're in Italy and you're wearing that costume and you're celebrating an Italian festival, but then when you're out eating at an Italian place or something, I don't know, like, or an American place in Italy, you get angry when people say "fuck America."
well, he didn't, but yeah, the rest of the soldiers did.
Yeah, but he joined into the fight, I guess,
No,
or
he
maybe
didn't.
not. Oh yeah, he
No,
didn't. He didn't. Yeah,
yeah, he just sat there looking sad because his daughter don't want to do man stuff with him.
and he lost tug of war.
He lost tug of war to another side that had a girl on the team. I'm sorry, that's inexcusable.
Okay, that's sexist once
Okay.
again.
All right, 1 point for the sexist meter for Simon. Ding ding. One more thing though, do you think Kid Cudi overall is a good actor in the show?
I do think he's a good actor, but there were moments in the show where we kind of see him just like going through his lines in his head. So I'm gonna give him like a 6 out of 10 for acting, or seven. A 7 is good.
I don't know, man.
I don't
It's
know.
unbelievable seeing this man hitting the punching bag with all the force in his forearms. Meanwhile, this brother wants to wear a dress to the Met Gala. You know, it's hard for me to look at him like this manly man on the show, knowing he like paints his toenails.
Wow, no, I didn't. I didn't feel that because also like watching that series that he did about himself and stuff like that. Like he was a good actor, but there are definitely moments where I lost him.
Yeah. All right, but I give this episode same. I give it a 5 out of 10.
I'll give it a 6. It's the same with the second one.
All right,
Yeah.
let's jump into episode four. It's titled "Right Here, Right Now." Episode four. Great titles here. So it's the last day before Craig and other soldiers are to be deployed, and Fraser, Caitlin, and her friends play a paintball game in the woods. Sam and Danny ambush Fraser and shoot him with dozens of paintballs, but Brittany finds the pair and stops them. Meanwhile, Craig spots Caitlin but lets her go with the flag. On the way back, Valentina is visibly upset that Craig will be away for 2 years, so he asks her to marry him there and then, and she warily accepts. After the group helps pick out impromptu wedding outfits, the couple is wed in a small ceremony. The group celebrates by breaking into a villa whose affluent Russian owners are away. The group swims in the villa's pool and parties inside, helping themselves to the Russian stock of food and alcohol. The group drinks heavily, notably Danny too, who describes himself as an abstainer from alcohol but drunkenly has sex with one of Valentina's friends on the couch. Caitlin asks Craig why he didn't shoot her during the paintball game, but he denies having had an open shot. Eventually, Craig and Valentina consummate their marriage in one of the villa's bedrooms while an inebriated Sam confronts Fraser in the bathroom. Fraser shrugs it off and leaves, but he's cornered and kissed by Soul outside the bathroom. Soul is like one of the Italian hookers who came over. He tells Caitlin, and she seems unfazed, but tells him not to do it again. Then make a pact they'll never share a kiss. Okay, I'm sorry. They said they'll never kiss in episode 4, but I could have sworn it was episode 3. Anyway, the next morning, Caitlin sneaks out back to the base to be deployed. Oh, sorry. The next morning, Craig sneaks out back to the base to be deployed. So I think hands down, this was the best episode in the
Yeah.
series. It was fun. It was interesting to look at. Great cinematography. You felt like you were there, and like these are you and your crazy friends doing something big before summer break or last time you'll see each other before you go off to college. I really liked the wedding idea, showing like love and just people celebrating. It was very dope. What do you think?
Yeah, it was definitely like just very sincere, very innocent. These like very, very young two people, and one of them is gonna go to like another country, and they're like, okay, fuck it, let's just get married. And how they like pulled off the little things for the wedding and stuff like that. It was very cute, and it definitely like the whole partying in the house scene reminded me of like my crazy days of drinking and partying. Like I never had a threesome, or I never like consummated with anyone on the couch in front of everybody, but yeah, it definitely like brought me back to my crazy teenage years, like just endless drinking, and yeah, it was just a fun episode in general.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. One thing that I felt like this episode was going to do was going to set up the last four episodes for solving the beef in the clique. Maybe that's me wanting to have that cherry on top, nice ribbon, happy ending, like that American ending. But the story of this group sort of dissipates after this, right? And they don't sort of come back together until like two or three episodes. And I thought it was also interesting that at the party, sort of some beef was put aside with Francis. I mean, yeah, Francis. I want to say Frenchie. I don't know the autistic kid at the
Fraser.
Frasier,
Fraser.
Francis, Francine, fuck boy. I don't know. Frasier at the beginning of the episode is like the enemy of the clique. He's like the guy who hangs out with them that they really don't want to be around. But at the party, he's sort of like actually is kind of cool, and they seem to be allowing him to be in the circle at the very least because he's Caitlyn's homie. And so, in the episode when Sam and Frasier have that discussion in the bathroom, I thought that was going to be something that was. Built on more in the show, and they were going to find some resolution, but there really wasn't one. And another thing that I forgot to mention, I think it was in episode 3 or in this episode, Frasier's mom was told that they need to deploy new soldiers to Afghanistan in about 90 days. But she said, we got soldiers ready right now, right? And she decides to send off people. And one of those people is Craig, one of the guys in the clip. And when Craig lets Caitlyn go with the flag, it's sort of like that Jesus moment. Jesus, before he was killed, he gave away stuff to everybody, right? So it makes you sort of appreciate Craig, and because he's going to die later, and you feel bad about it because you see that Craig was sort of the one guy in the story who you didn't have any problems with. He was sort of nice, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he was the best like person in the whole series because he was sort of like a brother to all of them, not only like his own brother Sam, but he was like he catches them like trying to do zip line in the middle of the night, and then first he gets mad at them, but then he encourages all of them to do it and stuff like that. So he's like that guy who keeps them in check and make sure they don't like get any harm. uh and then he's also like joins in with their fun, like he's also that way with Kate as well. He like kisses her on the forehead and stuff like that. He loves all of them like they're his sisters and brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I think it was a little bit like in this episode, it was like Kate attempting to include Frasier into her old friend group, like trying to have the best of both worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I guess I don't know. In the end, where Frasier is sort of like kissed or
Mm-hmm.
harassed or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a bit of a hint that he's not really going to be able to fit in the group because he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to be like making out with anyone. He doesn't really have any maybe sexual experiences and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
everyone else is like running around naked, making out or fucking or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, like he doesn't really want to do those raunchy things at
Mm-hmm.
least, but he does like talking about other, stuff
Right.
that
Right.
that are like beyond his age.
Right. Something else about this show, or at least this episode right here, I thought the big white guy who was like getting naked and making out with like the Italian girls who are the friends of Craig's wife, I thought that was Jonathan, the older soldier. But then we find out later that wasn't Jonathan. That was just some random Italian homie that they had hanging out with them. And I'm like, who is?
Enrico.
Yeah, Enrique. I'm like, who is this guy? He doesn't. He shows up in two episodes. And once again, I think this show is sort of like based in hyper realism. They wanted to make the show seem as real as possible. So of course, in your friend group, maybe you had that one friend that only comes around every 2 months, right? And that's Enrico. Yeah, we all know Enrico. He's cool, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And another thing that happened in this episode, I think, if I remember right, Sam made out with Brittany, right? I think
Hmm.
this was the first time, and I think a lot of it had to do with like the alcohol and the drugs that they were doing and stuff like that. But I don't know if it was this episode or later. But Brittany tells Caitlin, "I've always loved Sam. He's my guy." And I'm like, Brittany, stop, stop, stop. I
Yeah,
don't
I mean
know.
Brittany is that girl who just wants to be like liked because
Mm-hmm.
all the other girls around her are like pretty and skinny and they have boyfriends and stuff like that, and she's just trying to be like, raunchy.
Mm-hmm. Yo, I'm pretty sure if this show went another way, Brittany would have made out with Francis and been like, "I've always loved him. He was the one."
Frasier.
Frasier, Francis, fuckboy, I don't know. Frasier, she would have made out with Frasier and said, "I've always loved him since I've seen him walk, and I saw that log swinging between his legs. I could tell how he walks. He's got a big one."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was an interesting episode. You also see like a lot of exploration of sexuality here because you see like, I don't know, Danny like kissing on Craig's wife
Yeah,
Valentina and stuff like that, and you're like thinking, okay, like I don't know what he was trying to do, like maybe he's trying to teach Danny something since they're best friends, or maybe he also wanted to kiss Danny or something. I don't know,
I
but
think
you just like nothing is defined. Nobody gets a revelation and says, oh my god, I'm gay or anything like that, but kids just like sort of be comfortable in their sexual fluidity.
right, right. I think what that was, Craig wanted Danny to take care of his wife if he died, because I think Craig had a good understanding that he might not come back. So he was telling Danny, please take care of her by dicking her down every night, slapping that thing up, making her jump up and down on hot
That's
rock.
gross.
That's what he was saying. That's what he was saying. Maybe that was the,
That
it's the
might be the
soldier.
case. Yeah, I can see
It,
that happening.
it's the soldier understanding. You know what I mean? I don't know,
Yeah,
but that
yeah.
was definitely one of the best episodes. I don't want to skip over anything in it, but I can just say if you really want to watch this show and you only want to see like one good episode, I would say episode 4 is definitely hands down the best, one of the best in the series, hands down.
Yeah, but yeah, just hang on until episode 4. If you're kind of like not getting it until in the first 3 episodes, I
Hmm.
would say at least like make it through until episode 4.
Yeah, and then maybe you could turn it off after that, or just listen to Simon and Acty on X for our hilarious review because we're covering everything in it. Are we missing anything in this episode?
I don't know. I guess not really. I can't think of anything.
No, I just want to talk about Danny's character maybe for like 5 minutes or so. So
Mm-hmm.
like in the first or second episode, like they're at an Italian bar, and Caitlin is like dancing, and like some fat Italian kid comes up behind her, and he like tries to holler, and then like sort of like a fight breaks out, and Craig and Danny like get involved, and Craig has to hold Danny back from like beating up the kid, and Craig says, "I'm not a savage. I just think about God. I just think about God." I can't. That was one of the funniest lines in the show. And you know what? Like Danny's character is obviously like a very, angry young man. You know what I mean? And I know
Yeah.
what it feels like to be an angry young black man. But I just really wish he was explored more. Like where did that permanent resting bitch face come from, Danny? Where did it
Yeah,
come from?
definitely. I wanted to see like more of his story for sure. And
Hmm.
yeah, we definitely made fun of Danny for saying that line throughout the series after
Hmm.
that. And yeah, I mean, I guess that goes to show like not only he's not comfortable, embracing his Muslim identity at home, but he's also not comfortable embracing it among his friends because first of all, maybe he thinks that his friends are going to see him like a savage,
Hmm.
like he says. And then also like all of his friends are like drinking insanely and, being promiscuous and all of that, and that's not really like in the line with Islam.
Right.
But
Right.
we do see him like kind of like break free and explore something else in the 4th episode.
Right, right. There was the reason I brought that up is because in episode 4 he drinks for the first time when like these Italian hookers come through and like they're like
They're Valentina's friends,
yeah,
Simon.
all right, Valentina's colleagues, they come through and they want to, they're interested in Danny, right? And so they're like trying to holler at him, and one of them like drinks and like puts it in his mouth or something like that, and then next thing you know, Danny is turned up. He is turned. So I'm like, okay, Danny is already a good Muslim man. He's the average Tunisian.
Wow.
he's the he's the average Turk. Oh, alhamdulillah. And then as soon as some white women come around with alcohol, okay, now they turn. Okay,
What? No. Okay. Jeez, you have to take everything to the extreme. It's
I'm
not
sorry.
always some white woman luring you into the devil.
I'm sorry. Just when they got big titties.
You drink too. You can't say anything bad about me.
I admit that I don't always think about God, but I'm a savage. No, I always think about God, and I'm a savage. Yeah.
Wow. And I definitely did not lure you into the world of alcohol.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. But yeah. Anyway, anything else you want to drop before we cut this off?
No, no. I guess
Okay.
we can rate this episode as well and then finish
Right.
it.
I honestly really, really enjoyed this episode. I'm gonna give it like a good 8.5. 8.5. It's actually very entertaining.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna give it an 8, so I'll stick to that.
Yeah. All right. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Shout out to the Violator. We will cover your movie. Send some more suggestions our way. We're gonna hop on the live later and maybe do the last 4 episodes of We Are Who We Are. Stay tuned for more content and peace.